Hello everyone, and welcome. Glad to see you here. No matter where you are, no matter what time it is, it's obviously bedtime. We are here to read this evening's bedtime story, Nickleby by Charles Dickens. Our hero of the piece, Nicholas, took the stage last reading, and now some of his acquaintances from London are descending upon the theater in Portsmouth. Question is, are they going to unmask Nicholas, because he's been going by the name of Mr. Johnson? And maybe we'll find out that he's no Johnson indeed. How is everyone today? By the way, guys, I'm live now, so I'm going to jump down to the streaming channel. Sorry about that. I realized I was still in the Discord chat channel. Hello, Sparky. How are you? Glad you're here. How's everyone this weekend? I understand it's a holiday weekend in North America, so anybody doing any holiday plans for the long weekend or anything like that? Hello, little dude. How are you? How's your day been? Hey, J-Math. You forgot that you were off work? Okay. Well, hey Panda, good news. Got you a day off. You don't have to work on Monday. Surprise! Holy Gecko. Hey Gecko, how are you? Ad Astra, welcome. How are you? Glad to see you here. Everybody's coming out today. Well, now you get to exist longer on Sunday. Because, you can stay up late again, right? Oh, nice, J-Mouth. You're tired? I thought you were going to sleep. I confess, after we spoke, I went to bed early. And then I slept. Doing pretty well. I always look forward to hanging out with you guys and reading books and talking. Then we're going to play some Magic afterward. I got to Platinum. So I think that's pretty good for a old school dude who has only been playing for, what, 2 weeks now? I think 2 weeks. That's not bad, right, Gecko? The tradition of, hey, writing's fun. That's awesome. How's your back, by the way? I worry about that when you talk about going writing, since you were in that accident. Did we clip what? Your back's amazing? Okay. What did we clip, J-Math? So many clips. But I made Platinum. I wasn't streaming when I made Platinum, I confess. I played in between. No, I wasn't streaming, I'm afraid. Your favorite's the Minecraft one. I thought I was going to make it, and then I splatted. I could just hear like the going in the background in my head when that happened. But no, I did continue the tradition of ranking up from somebody conceding, though. They still had 14 life. They just gave up once I wiped out their creatures and brought mine back from the dead. There's so much more that could have happened. I mean, I've seen stuff turn around at like 3 life. Nobody wants to fight it out, though. I did get my butt kicked by this one really cool, like, rainbow shrine deck. I hadn't run into that before. And that got brutal. So I edited the deck that I was playing with and added some more stuff to take care of, like, shrines and enchantments and stuff like that. Hopefully it'll work out. By the way, I've been asked to find some other poets. Apparently not everybody likes Baudelaire as much as you and me, J-Math. So if anybody has any suggestions of poets they'd like to hear, I'd love to have any suggestions. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to get back into Nicholas Nickleby for a bit. And we're on chapter 25, if any of you are following along, concerning a young lady from London who joins the company, and an elderly admirer who follows in her train, with an affecting ceremony consequent on their arrival. I admit I looked forward a little bit to have an idea what to put for the title today. So I didn't read ahead, I just skimmed a tiny bit. So I hope you guys will forgive me for that. Yeah, I've seen you doing all the clips, J-Math. Or did you mean you have some other poets? But I suppose I should get into the story. So, the new piece was being a decided hit, was announced for every evening of performance until further notice. And the evenings when the theater was closed were reduced from 3 in the week to 2. Nor were these the only tokens of extraordinary success. For, on the succeeding Saturday, Nicholas received, by favor of the indefatigable Mrs. Grudden, no less a sum than 30 shillings, besides which substantial reward he enjoyed considerable fame and honor, having a presentation copy of Mr. Curdle's pamphlet forwarded to the theater, with that gentleman's own autograph, in itself an inestimable treasure, on the flyleaf, accompanied with a note containing many expressions of approval, and an unsolicited assurance that Mr. Curdle would be very happy to read Shakespeare to him for 3 hours every morning before breakfast during his stay in the town. Hello, Alex. I'm very glad you're here. "I've got another novelty, Johnson," said Mr. Crummles one morning in great glee. "What's that?" rejoined Nicholas. "The pony?" No, we never come to the pony till everything else has failed," said Mr. Crummles. "I don't think we shall come to the pony at all this season." No, not the pony." "A boy phenomenon, perhaps," suggested Nicholas. "There is only one phenomenon, sir," replied Mr. Crummles impressively, "and that's a girl." "Very true," said Nicholas. I beg your pardon. Then I don't know what it is, I'm sure." "What should you say to a young lady from London?" inquired Mr. Crummles. "Miss So-and-so of the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane." "I should say she would look very well in the bills," said Nicholas. "You're about right there," said Mr. Crummles. "And if you had said she would look very well upon the stage, too, you wouldn't have been far off. Look here, what do you think of this?" Yeah, I might have had a whole string of dirty jokes going through my head with the Mr. Johnson name. With this inquiry, Mr. Crummles unfolded a red poster and a blue poster and a yellow poster, at the top of each of which public notification was inscribed in enormous characters. "First appearance of the unrivaled Miss Patoker of the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane." "Dear me," said Nicholas. "I know that lady." "Then you are as acquainted with as much talent as was ever compressed into one young person's body," retorted Mr. Crummles, rolling up the bills again. "That is, Talent of a certain sort. The blood drinker, added Mr. Crummles with a prophetic sigh. The blood drinker will die with that girl, and she's the only sylph I ever saw who could stand upon one leg and play the tambourine upon her other knee, like a sylph. When does she come down? Asked Nicholas. We expect her today, replied Mr. Crummles. She's an old friend of Mrs. Crummles. Mrs. Crummles saw what she could do, always knew it from the first. She taught her, indeed nearly all she knows. Mrs. Crummles was the original blood drinker. Was she indeed? Yes, she was obliged to give it up, though. Did it disagree with her? Asked Nicholas. Not so much with her as with her audiences, replied Mr. Crummles. Nobody could stand it. It was too tremendous. You don't quite know what Mrs. Crummles is yet. Nicholas ventured to insinuate that he thought he did. No, you don't, said Mr. Crummles. You don't indeed. I don't, and that's a fact. I don't think her country will, until she's dead. Some new proof of talent bursts from that astonishing woman every year of her life. Look at her, mother of 6 children, 3 of them alive, and all upon the stage. Extraordinary, cried Nicholas. Ah, extraordinary indeed, rejoined Mr. Crummles, taking a complacent pinch of snuff and shaking his head gravely. I pledge you my professional word, I didn't even know she could dance, till her last benefit, and then she played Juliet, and Helen McGregor, and did the skipping rope hornpipe between the pieces. The very first time I saw that admirable woman, Johnson, said Mr. Crummles, drawing a little nearer, and speaking in the tone of confidential friendship. She stood upon her head on the butt end of a spear, surrounded with blazing fireworks. Sounds a bit like certain variety streamers or YouTubers doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You astonish me, said Nicholas. She astonished me, returned Mr. Crummles, with a very serious countenance. Such grace, coupled with such dignity. I adored her from that moment. The arrival of the gifted subject of these remarks put an abrupt termination to Mr. Crummles' eulogium. Almost immediately afterwards, Master Percy Crummles entered with a letter, which had arrived by the general post, and was directed to his gracious mother. At sight of the subscription whereof, Mrs. Crummles exclaimed, From Henrietta Pentoker, I do declare, and instantly became absorbed in the contents. Is it? Inquired Mr. Crummles, hesitating. Oh, yes, it's all right, replied Mr. Crummles, anticipating the question. What an excellent thing for her, to be sure. It's the best altogether that I ever heard of, I think, said Mr. Crummles. And then Mr. Crummles, Mrs. Crummles, and Master Percy Crummles all fell to laughing violently. Nicholas left them to enjoy their mirth together, and walked to his lodgings, wondering very much what mystery connected with Miss Pentoker could provoke such merriment, and pondering still more on the extreme surprise with which that lady would regard his sudden enlistment in a profession of which she was such a distinguished and brilliant ornament. But in this latter respect he was mistaken, for whether Mr. Vincent Crummles had paved the way, or Miss Pentoker had some special reason for treating him with even more than her usual amiability, their meeting at the theatre next day was more like that of 2 dear friends who had been inseparable from infancy, than a recognition passing between a lady and a gentleman who had only met some 6 times, and then by mere chance. Nay, Miss Pentoker even whispered that she had wholly dropped the Kenwigses in her conversations with the manager's family, and had represented herself as having encountered Mr. Johnson in the very first and most fashionable circles. And, on Nicholas receiving this intelligence with unfeigned surprise, she added, with a sweet glance, that she had a claim on his good nature now, and might tax it before long. I don't know. Sounds a little bit like a girl I met at a party once. And she decided that she liked me quite a lot from just a conversation that, quite frankly, I wasn't paying that much attention to. My girlfriend was working, and I was bored and not really interested in drinking, so I let her talk at me for a while. Much to my surprise, somehow she convinced my roommate, whose name was on the lease and mine wasn't at the time, that it would be a grand idea to have 3 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and that we should convert half the living room to her bedroom. And then she moved in. And then she comes up and whispers in my ear to confide to me, "You know, I only felt comfortable moving in because of you. And you're the reason I moved in." Needless to say, my girlfriend was not particularly pleased with this turn of events. In fact, I was really worried that there was going to be a dead body in my living room. This was the same roommate that I talked about before, who told me that he paid the internet, but not the power, with the money I had given him. This might have been not the best roommate. Be careful who you live with. Oh yes, this gentleman had a long and storied record of wonderful decisions. I mean, it's not that I have necessarily a problem finding the best people. I find some really fantastic people. However, sometimes the ones who are good and loyal and supportive and responsible and make good decisions don't always make for the best stories or anecdotes, because there's a whole lot less what the fudge moments going on there. I will say that he did have the most glorious long dark hair. I mean, I don't prefer men personally, but my God. He also had glorious cheekbones. But, you know, c'est la vie. Suppose you can't have beauty and brains in the same package always. You know, wasn't my only stalker either. I've actually had 3 stalkers, one of whom got sent to prison and then exiled. Yeah, that one was the only one that truly frightened me. I had kind of the gamut of stalkers. I had one that I dated, one that I inadvertently lived with and then ran away from, and then one that had to go to prison. My experience with stalkers may have some bearing on my desire for privacy. Also, I have certainly not said that I'm in Russia. That is entirely your theory. Though I haven't said that I'm not in Russia either. So, you know, make your own judgments. I think those are called marketers, J-Math, and it's not at all the same. Or, at a certain time in life, a military recruiter could also work. Did they breathe heavily? I kind of feel like that might be an ASMR channel. Heavy breathing. I could do that, right? What do you think? Would you guys tune in and just listen to me breathe in the mic relaxingly with relaxing mouth noises? I'm sorry. The thing is, all those people are way more successful as streamers than I am, and I can't fault them. And, you know, if people are enjoying it, more power to them. But I can't get that stream title out of my head, which I suppose makes it a very effective stream title. Did they regularly play salsa music in your office? No? You wouldn't, Sparky. Okay, fair enough. Well, then I'll stick with reading books. How about that? And some Magic the Gathering. Little bit of each. All right. Let's see. Where were we? Nicholas had the honor of playing in a slight piece with Miss Patoker that night, and could not but observe that the warmth of her reception was mainly attributable to a most persevering umbrella in the upper boxes. He saw, too, that the enchanting actress cast many sweet looks toward the quarter whence these sounds proceeded, and that every time she did so, the umbrella broke out afresh. Once he thought that a peculiarly shaped hat in the same corner was not wholly unknown to him. But, being occupied with his share of the stage business, he bestowed no great attention upon this circumstance, and it had quite vanished from his memory by the time he reached home. He had just sat down to supper with Smike, when one of the people of the house came outside the door and announced that a gentleman below stairs wished to speak to Mr. Johnson. "Well, if he does, you must tell him to come up, that's all I know," replied Nicholas. "One of our hungry brethren, I suppose, Smike." His fellow lodger looked at the cold meat in silent calculation of the quantity that would be left for dinner next day, and put back a slice he had cut for himself, in order that the visitor's encroachments might be less formidable in their effects. "It is not anybody who has been here before," said Nicholas, "for he is tumbling up every stair. Come in, come in. In the name of wonder! Mr. Lillyvick?" It was indeed the collector of water rates, who, regarding Nicholas with a fixed look and immovable countenance, shook hands with most portentous solemnity, and sat himself down in a seat by the chimney-corner. "Why, when did you come here?" asked Nicholas. "This very morning, sir," replied Mr. Lillyvick. "Oh, I see. Then you were at the theatre tonight, and it was your, this umbrella," said Mr. Lillyvick, producing a fat green cotton one with a battered ferrule. "What did you think of that performance?" "So far as I could judge, being on the stage," replied Nicholas, "I thought it very agreeable." "Agreeable!" cried the collector. "I mean to say, sir, that it was delicious." Mr. Lillyvick bent forward to pronounce the last word with greater emphasis, and having done so, drew himself up, and frowned and nodded a great many times. "I say, delicious," repeated Mr. Lillyvick. "Absorbing, fairy-like, tumultuous." And again Mr. Lillyvick drew himself up, and again he frowned and nodded. "Ah," said Nicholas, a little surprised at these symptoms of ecstatic approbation. "Yes, she is a clever girl." "She is a divinity," returned Mr. Lillyvick, giving a collector's double knock on the ground with the umbrella before mentioned. "I have known divine actresses before now, sir. I used to collect, at least I used to call for, and very often call for, the water rate at the house of a divine actress, who lived in my beat for upwards of 4 years, but never, no never, sir, of all the divine creatures, actresses or no actresses, did I see a diviner one than his Henrietta Patoker." I think he might have a slight crush. Nicholas had much ado to prevent himself from laughing. Not trusting himself to speak, he merely nodded in accordance with Mr. Lillyvick's nods, and remained silent. "Let me speak a word with you in private," said Mr. Lillyvick. Nicholas looked good-humoredly at Smike, who, taking the hint, disappeared. "A bachelor is a miserable wretch, sir," said Mr. Lillyvick. "Is he?" asked Nicholas. He is, rejoined the collector. I have lived in the world for nigh 60 year, and I ought to know what it is. You ought to know, certainly, thought Nicholas, but whether you do or not is another question. If a bachelor happens to have saved a little of money, said Mr. Lillyvick, his sisters and brothers and nephews and nieces look to that money, and not to him. Even if, by being a public character, he is the head of the family, or, as it may be, the main, from which all the other little branches are turned on, they still wish him dead all the while, and get low-spirited every time they see him looking in good health, because they want to come into his little property. You see that? Oh, yes, replied Nicholas. It's very true, no doubt. The great reason for not being married, resumed Mr. Lillyvick, is the expense. That's what's kept me off. Or else, Lord, said Mr. Lillyvick, snapping his fingers, I might have had 50 women. Fine women? Asked Nicholas. Fine women, sir, replied the collector. Aye, not so fine as Henrietta Patoker, for she is an uncommon specimen. But such women as don't fall into every man's way, I can tell you. Now, suppose a man can get a fortune in a wife instead of with her, eh? Why, then he's a lucky fellow, replied Nicholas. That's what I say, retorted the collector, patting him benightedly on the side of the head with his umbrella. Just what I say. Henrietta Patoker, the talented Henrietta Patoker, has a fortune in herself, and I am going to make her Mrs. Lillyvick, suggested Nicholas. No, sir, not to make her Mrs. Lillyvick, replied the collector. Actresses, sir, always keep their maiden names. That's the regular thing. But I'm going to marry her, and the day after tomorrow, too. What about people wishing he was dead? I mean, if you recall the dinner party and everything, they were primarily concerned about keeping him happy because they wanted the daughters to inherit his money, or some amount of money from them. So, he's probably not far off from it. Also, he was kind of an unpleasant ass, so it might be that that's the only thing people see in him. I congratulate you, sir, said Nicholas. Thank you, sir, replied the collector, buttoning his waistcoat. I shall draw her salary, of course, and I hope after all that it's nearly as cheap to keep 2 as it is to keep 1. That's a consolation. Surely you don't want any consolation at such a moment, observed Nicholas. No, replied Mr. Lillyvick, shaking his head nervously. No, of course not. But how come you both here if you're going to be married, Mr. Lillyvick? Why, that's what I came to explain to you, replied the collector of water rate. The fact is, we have thought it best to keep it secret from the family. Family, said Nicholas. What family? The Kenwigses, of course, rejoined Mr. Lillyvick. If my niece and the children had known a word about it before I came away, they'd have gone into fits at my feet, and never have come out of 'em till I took an oath not to marry anybody. Or they'd have gotten out a commission of lunacy, or some dreadful thing, said the collector, quite trembling as he spoke. I did mention he was an unpleasant ass, you know. Family doesn't approve of elder rich bachelor member taking up with some woman much, much younger than him because they suspect it's only for the money. Yep, this is not a familiar tale. To be sure, said Nicholas. Yes, they would have been jealous, no doubt. To prevent which, said Mr. Lillyvick, Henrietta Patoker, it was settled between us, should come down here to her friends, the Crummleses, under pretense of this engagement, and I should go down to Guildford the day before, and join her on the coach there, which I did, and we came down from Guildford yesterday together. Now, for fear you should be writing to Mr. Noggs, and might say anything about us, we have thought it best to let you into the secret. We shall be married from the Crummleses' lodgings, and shall be delighted to see you, either before church or at breakfast time, which you like. It won't be expensive, you know, said the collector, highly anxious to prevent any misunderstandings on this point. Just muffins and coffee, with perhaps a shrimp or something of that sort for a relish, you know. Yes, I understand, replied Nicholas. Oh, I shall be most happy to come. It will give me the greatest pleasure. Where's the lady stopping? With Mr. Crummles? Or with Mrs. Crummles? Why, no, said the collector. They couldn't very well dispose of her at night. And so she is staying with an acquaintance of hers, and another young lady. They both belong to the theatre. Miss Snevellicci, I suppose, said Nicholas. Yes, that's the name. And they'll be bridesmaids, I presume, said Nicholas. Why, said the collector with a rueful face, they will have 4 bridesmaids. I'm afraid they'll make it rather theatrical. Oh, no, not at all, replied Nicholas, with an awkward attempt to convert a laugh into a cough. Who may the 4 be? Miss Snevellicci, of course, Miss Ledbrook. The phenomenon, groaned the collector. Cried Nicholas. I beg your pardon. I don't know what I'm laughing at. Yes, that'll be very pretty. The phenomenon. Who else? Some young woman or other, replied the collector, rising. Some other friend of Henrietta Petoker's. Well, you'll be careful not to say anything about it, will you? You may safely depend upon me, replied Nicholas. Won't you take anything to eat or drink? No, said the collector. I haven't any appetite. I should think it was a very pleasant life. The married one, eh? I have not the least doubt of it, rejoined Nicholas. Yes, said the collector. Certainly. Oh, yes, no doubt. Good night. With these words, Mr. Lillyvick, whose manner had exhibited through the whole of this interview a most extraordinary compound of precipitation, hesitation, confidence and doubt, fondness, misgiving, meanness, and self-importance, turned his back upon the room, and left Nicholas to enjoy a laugh by himself, if he felt so disposed. Without stopping to inquire whether the intervening day appeared to Nicholas to consist of the usual number of hours of the ordinary length, it may be remarked that, to the parties more directly interested in the forthcoming ceremony, it passed with great rapidity, insomuch that when Miss Petoker awoke on the succeeding morning in the chamber of Miss Snevellicci, she declared that nothing should ever persuade her that that really was the day which was to behold a change in her condition. I never will believe it, said Miss Petoker. I cannot really. It's of no use talking. I can never make up my mind to go through with such a trial. On hearing this, Miss Snevellicci and Miss Ledbrook, who knew perfectly well that their fair friend's mind had been made up for 3 or 4 years, at any period of which time she would have cheerfully undergone the desperate trial, now approaching, if she could have found any eligible gentleman disposed for the venture, began to preach comfort and firmness, and to say how very proud she ought to feel that it was in her power to confer lasting bliss on a deserving object, and how necessary it was for the happiness of mankind in general that women should possess fortitude and resignation on such occasions, and that, although for their parts they held true happiness to consist in a single life, which they would not willingly exchange, no, not for any worldly consideration, still, thank God, if ever the time should come, they hoped they knew their duty too well to repine, but would the rather submit with meekness and humility of spirit to a fate for which Providence had clearly designed them with a view to the contentment and reward of their fellow creatures. That was convoluted. I might feel it was a great blow, said Miss Snevellicci, to break up old associations and what-do-you-call-ems of that kind. But I would submit, my dear. I would indeed. So would I, said Miss Ledbrook. I would rather court the yoke than shun it. I have broken hearts before now, and I'm very sorry for it, for it's a terrible thing to reflect upon. It is indeed, said Miss Snevellicci. Now, Led, my dear, we must positively get her ready, or we shall be too late. We shall indeed. This pious reasoning, and perhaps the fear of being too late, supported the bride through the ceremony of robing, after which strong tea and brandy were administered in alternate doses as a means of strengthening her feeble limbs and causing her to walk steadier. How do you feel now, my love? Inquired Miss Snevellicci. Oh, Lillyvick, cried the bride, if you knew what I am undergoing for you. Of course he knows it, love, and will never forget it, said Miss Ledbrook. Do you think he won't? Cried Miss Petoker, really showing great capability for the stage. Oh, do you think he won't? Do you think Lillyvick will always remember it? Always, always, always? There is no knowing in what this burst of feeling might have ended, if Miss Snevellicci had not at that moment proclaimed the arrival of the fly, which so astounded the bride that she shook off diverse alarming symptoms, which were coming on very strong, and running to the glass, adjusted her dress, and calmly declared that she was ready for the sacrifice. Do you really regard your own wedding as a sacrifice and submission to a yoke? She was accordingly supported into the coach, and there kept up, as Miss Snevellicci said, with perpetual sniffs of sal volatile and sips of brandy and other gentle stimulants, until they reached the manager's door, which was already opened by the two Master Crummleses, who wore white cockades and were decorated with the choicest and most resplendent waistcoats in the theatrical wardrobe. By the combined exertions of these young gentlemen and the bridesmaids, assisted by the coachman, Miss Patoker was at length supported in a condition of much exhaustion to the first floor, where she no sooner encountered the youthful bridegroom than she fainted with great decorum. "Henrietta Patoker," said the collector, "cheer up, my lovely one." Miss Patoker grasped the collector's hand, but emotion choked her utterance. "Is the sight of me so dreadful, Henrietta Patoker?" said the collector. "Oh, no, no, no," rejoined the bride, "but all the friends, the darling friends of my youthful days, to leave them all, it is such a shock." With such expressions of sorrow, Miss Patoker went on to enumerate the dear friends of her youthful days, one by one, and to call upon such of them as were present to come and embrace her. This done, she remembered that Mrs. Crummleses had been more than a mother to her, and after that Mr. Crummleses had been more than a father to her, and after that the Master Crummleses and Miss Ninetta Crummles had been more than brothers and sisters to her. These various remembrances, being each accompanied with a series of hugs, occupied a long time, and they were obliged to drive to church very fast, for fear they should be too late. The procession consisted of 2 flies, in the first of which were Miss Bravassa, the 4th bridesmaid, Mrs. Crummles, the collector, Mr. Fillaire, who had been chosen as his second on the occasion. In the other were the bride, Mr. Crummles, Miss Snevellicci, Miss Ledbrook, and the phenomenon. The costumes were beautiful. The bridesmaids were quite covered with artificial flowers, and the phenomenon in particular was rendered almost invisible by the portable arbor in which she was enshrined. Miss Ledbrook, who was of a romantic turn, wore on her breast the miniature of some field officer unknown, which she had purchased at a great bargain not very long before. The other ladies displayed several dazzling articles of imitative jewelry, almost equal to real, and Mrs. Crummles came out in a stern and gloomy majesty, which attracted the admiration of all beholders. But perhaps the appearance of Mr. Crummles was more striking and appropriate than that of any member of the party. This gentleman, who personated the bride's father, had, in pursuance of a happy and original conception, made up for the part by arraying himself in a theatrical wig of a style and pattern commonly known as a brown George, and moreover assuming a snuff-colored suit of the previous century with gray silk stockings and buckles to his shoes. The better to support his assumed character, he had determined to be greatly overcome, and consequently, when they entered the church, the sobs of the affectionate parent were so heart-rending that the pew-opener suggested the propriety of his retiring to the vestry and comforting himself with a glass of water before the ceremony began. The procession up the aisle was beautiful, the bride, with the 4 bridesmaids, forming a group previously arranged and rehearsed. "Hi, Vezir." This reminds you to continue your book and you stop buying. Okay, so you're just going to peace out? Thanks, man. By the way, I made platinum, Vezir, in Magic. The bride with the 4 bridesmaids, forming a group previously arranged and rehearsed. The collector, followed by his second, imitating his walk and gestures to the indescribable amusement of some theatrical friends in the gallery. Mr. Crummles, with an infirm and feeble gait. Mrs. Crummles, advancing with that stage walk, which consists of a stride and a stop alternately. It was the completest thing ever witnessed. The ceremony was very quickly disposed of, and all parties present having signed the register, for which purpose, when it came to his turn, Mr. Crummles carefully wiped and put on an immense pair of spectacles. They went back to breakfast in high spirits, and here they found Nicholas awaiting their return. "Now then," said Crummles, who had been assisting Mrs. Grudden in the preparations, which were on a more extensive scale than was quite agreeable to the collector. "Breakfast! Breakfast!" No second invitation was required. The company crowded and squeezed themselves at the table as well as they could, and fell to immediately. Miss Petowker blushing very much when anybody was looking, and eating very much when anybody was not looking, and Mr. Lillyvick going to work as though with cool resolve that since the good things must be paid for by him, he would leave as little as possible for the Crummleses to eat up afterward. "It's very soon done, sir, isn't it?" required Mr. Folair of the collector, leaning over the table to address him. "What is done, sir?" returned Mr. Lillyvick. "The tying up, the fixing oneself with a wife," replied Mr. Folair. "It doesn't take long, does it?" "No, sir," replied Mr. Lillyvick, coloring. "It does not take long, and what then, sir?" "Oh, nothing," said the actor. "It doesn't take a man long to hang himself either, eh? Ha ha!" Mr. Lillyvick looked down his knife and fork and looked round the table with indignant astonishment. "To hang himself," repeated Mr. Lillyvick. A profound silence came upon all, for Mr. Lillyvick was dignified beyond expression. "To hang himself," cried Mr. Lillyvick again. "Is any parallel attempted to be drawn in this company between matrimony and hanging?" "The noose, you know," said Mr. Folair, a little crestfallen. "The noose, sir," retorted Mr. Lillyvick. "Does any man dare to speak to me of a noose and Henrietta Lillyvick," suggested Mr. Crummles. "And Henrietta Lillyvick in the same breath," said the collector. "In this house, in the presence of Mr. and Mrs. Crummles, who have brought up a talented and virtuous family, to be blessings and phenomenons, and what not, are we to hear talk of nooses?" "Folair," said Mr. Crummles, deeming it a matter of decency to be affected by this allusion to himself and partner, "I'm astonished at you." "What are you going on this way at me for?" urged the unfortunate actor. "What have I done?" "Done, sir," cried Mr. Lillyvick, "aimed a blow at the whole framework of society." "And the best and tenderest feelings," added Crummles, relapsing into the old man. "And the highest and most estimable of social ties," said the collector. "Noose, as if one was caught, trapped into the married state, pinned by the leg instead of going into it of one's own accord and glorifying in the act." I didn't mean to make it out that you were caught and trapped and pinned by the leg," replied the actor. "I'm sorry for it. I can't say any more." "So you ought to be, sir," returned Mr. Lillyvick, "and I am glad to hear that you have enough of feeling left to be so." The quarrel appearing to terminate with this reply, Mrs. Lillyvick considered that the fittest occasion, the attention of the company being no longer distracted, to burst into tears and require the assistance of all four bridesmaids, which was immediately rendered, though not without some confusion, for the room being small and the tablecloth long, a whole detachment of plates were swept off the board at the very first move. Regardless of this circumstance, however, Mrs. Lillyvick refused to be comforted until the belligerents had passed their words that the dispute should be carried no further, which, after a sufficient show of reluctance, they did, and from that time Mr. Folair sat in moody silence, contenting himself with pinching Nicholas's leg when anything was said, and so expressing his contempt both for the speaker and the sentiments to which he gave utterance. And what did Nicholas do to keep getting pinched? There were a great number of speeches made, some by Nicholas, and some by Crummles, and some by the collector. 2 by the Master Crummleses in returning thanks for themselves, and 1 by the phenomenon on behalf of the bridesmaids, at which Mrs. Crummles shed tears. There was some singing, too, from Miss Ledbrook and Miss Bravassa, and very likely there might have been more if the fly driver, who stopped to drive the happy pair to the spot where they proposed to take steamboat to ride, had not sent in a peremptory message intimating that if they didn't come out directly, he should infallibly demand 18 pence over and above his agreement. This desperate threat effectually broke up the party. After a most pathetic leave-taking, Mr. Lilyvick and his bride departed for Ryde, where they were to spend the next 2 days in profound retirement, and whither they were accompanied by the infant, who had been appointed travelling bridesmaid on Mr. Lilyvick's express stipulation, as the steamboat people, deceived by her size, would, he had previously ascertained, transport her at half price. As there was no performance that night, Mr. Crummles declared his intention of keeping it up till everything to drink was disposed of, but Nicholas, having to play Romeo for the first time on the ensuing evening, contrived to slip away in the midst of a temporary confusion, occasioned by the unexpected development of strong symptoms of inebriety on the conduct of Mrs. Grudden. To this act of desertion he was led, not only by his own inclinations, but by his anxiety on account of Smike, who, having to sustain the character of the apothecary, had been as yet wholly unable to get any more of the part into his head than the general idea that he was very hungry, which, perhaps from old recollections, he had acquired with great aptitude. "I don't know what's to be done, Smike," said Nicholas, laying down the book. "I'm afraid you can't learn it, my poor fellow." "I'm afraid not," said Smike, shaking his head. "I think if you... but that would give you so much trouble." "What?" inquired Nicholas. "Never mind me." "I think," said Smike, "if you were to keep saying it to me in little bits, over and over again, I should be able to recollect it from hearing you." "Do you think so?" exclaimed Nicholas. "Well said. Let us see who tires first." "Not I, Smike, trust me. Now, who calls so loud?" "Who calls so loud?" said Smike. "Who calls so loud?" repeated Nicholas. "Who calls so loud?" cried Smike. Thus they continued to ask each other who called so loud, over and over again, and when Smike had that by heart, Nicholas went to another sentence, and then to 2 at a time, and then to 3, and so on, until at midnight poor Smike found to his unspeakable joy that he really began to remember something about the text. Early in the morning they went to it again, and Smike, rendered more confident by the progress he had already made, got on faster and with better heart. As soon as he began to acquire the words pretty freely, Nicholas showed him how he must come in with both hands spread out upon his stomach, and how he must occasionally rub it in compliance with the established form by which people on the stage always denote that they want something to eat. After the morning's rehearsal they went to work again, nor did they stop, except for a hasty dinner, until it was time to repair to the theatre at night. Never had master a more anxious, humble, docile pupil. Never had a pupil a more patient, unwearying, and considerate, kind-hearted master. As soon as they were dressed, and at every interval when he was not upon the stage, Nicholas renewed his instructions. They prospered well. The Romeo was received with hearty plaudits and unbounded favour, and Smike was pronounced unanimously, alike by audiences and actors, the very prince and prodigy of apothecaries. All right, let's take a short intermission there. We'll say Dickens, a lot of his descriptions and stuff are just totally over the top. Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes I admit the everything being sarcastic and sardonic kind of gets wearying a little bit. What do you guys think? Yes, take a minute and go make tea, J-Math. I'll put up a timer real quick. There you go. You got 5 minutes to go heat up some water and make some tea, J-Math. Run! I'm gonna ditch my hoodie. Oh. Too much? What do you mean too much? Well, I mean, do you want me to keep everybody waiting so that he can make it the more traditional way? Zoning out. Are you sure that's not just my soothing voice? Just relaxing you, lulling you into sleep. Oh, you're on mobile? Okay, we won't wait for you at all then. That's a cool bookshelf. I like it. JMath posted a picture of his new bookcase in the general channel on the bedtime Discord. Figured I'd check the pending messages while we were taking a short intermission. Yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool looking. All right, I owe you guys a giveaway question. Which, by the way, I'm starting to get a little concerned because I have not gotten a whole lot of answers. You guys just waiting till the end of the month and then answer them all at once? All right. Giveaway question. What was the first game I streamed? There you go. We've got 9 questions so far. Leisure Soon, Larry. Oh, is it sad that I actually know what that game is? I've never played it, but I'm aware of its existence. Uh-oh, I missed yesterday's question? Shoot. All right, what was yesterday's question? Remind me. Do you remember? All right. What ate the elder things? Okay, 10 questions then. What was the first game I streamed? There we go. All right. 10 questions. I'm sorry. Thank you, Vela, for looking out for me and catching my error. I appreciate it. I think I need a bigger teapot. All right. Shall we get back to the story? I'm going to end round about the hour and a half mark with the story, and then we'll switch over to Magic the Gathering from there. So, if anybody wants to play some Magic against me, jump in the Discord. Oh, clicky clacky. I like my mechanical keyboard. Don't judge me. When I was younger, I actually had one of the old like IBM mechanical keyboards, and it was disposed of when I went off to the military. I was so bummed. But yeah, I really like them. I'm glad you guys like them too. I might have to judge you a little bit if you didn't like them. Just a little bit of judgment. Just a touch. At one time I thought I was gonna like harvest some old typewriters and make a really cool like brass and recycled typewriter key, mechanical keyboard, and, you know, be all cool. And yeah, I'm not doing that. That's way too much work. I would far rather just buy a G910 and run with that. But let's get back to Nicholas Nickleby. All right. Oh, by the way, one other piece of news. I canceled the Tuesday stream, so there will be no more Tuesday stream. I had added more streams during the week than I had intended to do when I started this out, and that was the one with the lowest viewership and attendance. And while I enjoyed the first few Conan stories, as I dug in more, they got more problematic, and there was a lot of racism. Not as much sexism as I thought there would be, but a lot of racism and stuff, and it just, it's not what I want to read. So, great chewy sentences aside, I decided that I was going to skip the rest of that. Well, sleep might be overrated. Or at least I keep telling myself it's overrated as I have difficulty getting it. It's pretty rare that I sleep more than a few hours in a stretch, and you know, I might grab like 2-3 hour sleeps or 2 hour sleeps in the day. Yeah, if only it was limited to old stuff, JMath. But I'm afraid that judging people on their skin tone and conformation and whatnot is alive and well all over the globe. Chapter 26 is fraught with some danger to Miss Nickleby's peace of mind. Danger's capitalist. I thought for a second we were going to have an action chapter. Maybe there'd be like a duel or a sword fight or pistols at dawn or something, but nope, it's danger to peace of mind. Rip. The place was a handsome suite of private apartments in Regent Street. The time was 3 o'clock in the afternoon to the dull and plodding, and the first hour of morning to the gay and spirited. Okay, that's funny. So you're gay and spirited if you're not getting up until 3 in the morning because you were out all night partying, but it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon to, you know, responsible people who go and, you know, do the adulting and whatnot. The persons were Lord Frederick Verisopht and his friend Sir Mulberry Hawk. These distinguished gentlemen were reclining listlessly on a couple of sofas, with a table between them, on which were scattered in rich confusion the materials of an untasted breakfast. Newspapers lay strewn about the room, but these, like the meal, were neglected and unnoticed. Not, however, because any flow of conversation prevented the attractions of the journals from being called into request, for not a word was exchanged between the two. nor was any sound uttered, save when one, in tossing about to find an easier resting place for his aching head, uttered an exclamation of impatience, and seemed for a moment to communicate a new restlessness to his companion. I mean, he delivered a solid beatdown to that guy. Granted, with great provocation, but these appearances would in themselves have furnished a pretty strong clue to the extent of the debauch of the previous night, even if there had not been other indications of the amusements in which it had been passed. A couple of billiard balls, all mud and dirt, 2 battered hats, a champagne bottle with a soiled glove twisted round the neck, to allow of its being grasped more surely in its capacity as an offensive weapon, a broken cane, a card case without the top, an empty purse, a watch guard snapped asunder, a handful of silver, mingled with fragments of half-smoked cigars and their stale and crumbled ashes. These, and many other tokens of riot and disorder, hinted very intelligibly at the nature of last night's gentlemanly frolics. You know what they forgot in their party aftermath? They forgot a bunch of half-finished drinks, a smashed grandfather clock, a ripped shower curtain, a lot of embarrassing pictures of various people. At least 2 people passed out in very strange positions and very strange places. By the way, if you ever decide to party with a bunch of acrobats from a traveling circus, make sure that you do things like pack up the grandfather clock in your hall, or take down the shower curtain, or really just remove anything breakable, because drunken acrobats are they're fun, but they're destructive. And yes, I'm referring to an actual party that I had. We had you guys are familiar with the Cirque du Soleil, right? The big fancy traveling circus. Yeah. So I was partying with a half dozen of their acrobats, and 2 of them I convinced to try to take shots with one-armed presses. So what they did was they did a handstand on this carved wooden chest that I had with shot glasses underneath them, and they went to a single-handed headstand, then lowered themselves down so that they could grab the shot glass with their mouth and then do a flip to take the shot. They were incredibly drunk at the time. And believe it or not, one of them actually pulled it off. The Brazilian guy pulled it off. The guy from Norway completely biffed it and fell flat on his face. I completely forgot that he was in here, fella. I'm sorry. But it was fun. Does that help? Yeah, vaccine shots. I think that might be worse, J-Math. Because, you know, doing a one-handed handstand and then pressing down to take a shot seems to me pretty likely that you're going to get the needle in the eyeball, and that's bad. Oh, and then two of the acrobats were dating, and one of the guys at the party was hitting on the girl, one of the non-acrobats, and they kind of got into a conversation about it, and somehow it ended up challenging that guy's manhood, and his response to it was to make out with the girl in front of her boyfriend, and then make out with the boyfriend in front of her. It was... I was shocked. It was not something I had ever imagined that particular individual doing. It was quite a party. It was not my wildest party. It was not my wildest party by a long shot. But it was fun. It also did kill my grandfather clock. I ended up having to get rid of it and sold it for scrap to somebody who thought they'd repair it. There might have been a two-person impromptu tumbling routine down the hall that ended up landing on the clock. But I mean, if you guys don't want to hear stories about my wild party days and the crazy shit that I've done in my life, I can totally stop telling stories like that too. I wasn't that young. On the other hand, that story is now a valid thing for the giveaway next month. So, you know, maybe we'll ask what the acrobats destroyed. All right, but aftermath of a party, except in the book, with Lord Verisopht and Sir Mulberry Hawk. Lord Frederick Verisopht was the first to speak. Dropping his slippered foot on the ground and yawning heavily, he struggled into a sitting posture. By the way, what's the craziest stuff you guys have ever had after a party? Whether you were hosting or attending. I'll check the chat in a couple minutes, but well, let's see what you got. He struggled into a sitting posture and turned his dull, languid eyes toward his friend, to whom he called in a drowsy voice. "Hello," replied Sir Mulberry, turning round. "Are we going to lie here all day?" said the Lord. "I don't know that we're fit for anything else," replied Sir Mulberry. "Yet a while at least. I haven't a grain of life in me this morning." "Life!" cried Lord Verisopht. "I feel as if there would be nothing so snug and comfortable as to die at once." "Then why don't you die?" said Sir Mulberry. With which inquiry he turned his face away and seemed to occupy himself in an attempt to fall asleep. Definitely seen people wishing death on others when they have a hangover in the morning. His hopeful friend and pupil drew a chair to the breakfast table and essayed to eat, but, finding that impossible, lounged to the window, then loitered up and down the room with his hand to his fevered head, and finally threw himself again on his sofa and roused his friend once more. "What the devil's the matter?" groaned Sir Mulberry, sitting upright on the couch. Although Sir Mulberry said this with sufficient ill humor, he did not seem to feel himself quite at liberty to remain silent, for, after stretching himself very often and declaring with a shiver that it was infernal cold, he made an experiment at the breakfast table, and proving more successful in it than his less seasoned friend, remained there. "Suppose," said Sir Mulberry, pausing with a morsel on the point of his fork, "suppose we go back to the subject of little Nickleby, eh?" "Which little Nickleby? The Monday-lender or the gal?" asked Lord Verisopht. "You take me, I see," said Sir Mulberry. "The girl, of course." You promised me you'd find her out, said Lord Verisopht. So I did, rejoined his friend, but I have thought further of the matter since then. You distrust me in the business. You shall find her out yourself. Nay, remonstrated Lord Verisopht. But I say yes, returned his friend. You shall find her out yourself. Don't think that I mean when you can. I know as well as you that if I did, you could never get sight of her without me. No, I say you shall find her out. Shall, and I'll put you in the way. Now curse me if you ain't a real devilish, downright, thorough-paced friend, said the young lord, on whom this speech had produced a most reviving effect. I'll tell you how, said Sir Mulberry. She was at that dinner as a bait for you. No, cried the young lord. What the day— As a bait for you, repeated his friend. Old Nickleby told me so himself. What a fine old cock it is, exclaimed Lord Verisopht. A noble rascal. Yes, said Sir Mulberry. He knew she was a smart little creature. Smart, interposed the young lord. Upon my soul, Hawk, she's a perfect beauty. A picture, a statue, upon my soul she is. Well, replied Sir Mulberry, shrugging his shoulders and manifesting an indifference, whether he felt it or not. That's a matter of taste. If mine doesn't agree with yours, so much the better. Assuming that's like the outcome or aftermath of one of the parties that Sparky's been at. Confound it, reasoned the lord. You were thick enough with her that day, anyhow. I could hardly get in a word. Well, enough for once, well enough for once, said Sir Mulberry, but not worth the trouble of being agreeable to again. If you seriously want to follow up the niece, tell the uncle that you must know where she lives, and how she lives, and with whom, or you are no longer a customer of his. He'll tell you fast enough. Why didn't you say this before? Asked Lord Verisopht, instead of letting me go on a burning, consuming, dragging out a miserable existence for an age. I didn't know it in the first place, answered Sir Mulberry carelessly, and in the second, I didn't believe you were so very much in earnest. Now, the truth was that in the interval which had elapsed since the dinner at Ralph Nickleby's, Sir Mulberry Hawk had been furtively trying by every means in his power to discover whence Kate had so suddenly appeared and whither she had disappeared. Unassisted by Ralph, however, with whom he had held no communication since their angry parting on that occasion, all his efforts were wholly unavailing, and he had therefore arrived at the determination of communicating to the young lord the substance of the admission he had gleaned from that worthy. To this he was impelled by various considerations, among which the certainty of knowing whatever the weak young man knew was decidedly not the least, as the desire of encountering the usurer's niece again, and using his utmost arts to reduce her pride and revenge himself for her contempt, was uppermost in his thoughts. It was a politic course of proceeding, and one which could not fail to redound to his advantage in every point of view, since the very circumstance of his having extorted from Ralph Nickleby his real design in introducing his niece to such society, coupled with his extreme disinterestedness in communicating it so freely to his friend, could not but advance his interest in that quarter, and greatly facilitate the passage of coin, pretty frequent and speedy already, from the pockets of Lord Frederick Verisopht to those of Sir Mulberry Hawk. Yeah, so if you guys remember, Sir Mulberry Hawk was the one who basically assaulted Kate at the party. You woke up with someone else's clothes or in someone else's clothes, Sparky? Thus reasoned Sir Mulberry, and in pursuance of this reasoning, he and his friend soon afterward repaired to Ralph Nickleby's, there to execute a plan of operations concerted by Sir Mulberry himself, avowedly to promote his friend's object, and really to attain his own. They found Ralph at home, and alone. As he led them into the drawing-room, the recollection of the scene which had taken place there seemed to occur to him, for he cast a curious look at Sir Mulberry, who bestowed upon it no other acknowledgment than a careless smile. They had a short conference upon some money matters then in progress, which were scarcely disposed of when the lordly dupe, in pursuance of his friend's instructions, requested with some embarrassment to speak to Ralph alone. "Alone, eh?" cried Sir Mulberry, affecting surprise. "Oh, very good. I'll walk into the next room here. Don't keep me long, that's all." So saying, Sir Mulberry took up his hat, and humming a fragment of a song, disappeared through the door of communication between the two drawing-rooms, and closed it after him. "Now, my lord," said Ralph, "what is it?" "Nickleby," said his client, throwing himself along the sofa on which he had been previously seated, so as to bring his lips nearer to the old man's ear. "What a pretty creature your niece is." "Is she, my lord?" replied Ralph. Maybe. I don't trouble my head with such matters." "You know she's a devilish fine girl," said the client. "You must know that, Nickleby. Come, don't deny that." "Yes, I believe she is considered so," replied Ralph. "Indeed, I know she is. If I did not, you are an authority on such points, and your taste, my lord, on all points indeed, is undeniable." Nobody but the young man to whom these words were addressed could have been deaf to the sneering tone in which they were spoken, or blind to the look of contempt by which they were accompanied. But Lord Frederick Verisopht was both, and took them to be complimentary. "Well," he said, "perhaps you're a little right, and perhaps you're a little wrong. A little of both, Nickleby. I want to know where this beauty lives, that I may have another peep at her, Nickleby." "Really," Ralph began in his usual tones. "Don't talk so loud," cried the other, achieving the great point of his lesson to a miracle. "I don't want Hawk to hear." "You know he is your rival, do you?" said Ralph, looking sharply at him. "He always is, damn him," replied the client, "and I want to steal a march upon him. Ha ha! He'll cut up so rough, Nickleby, at our talking together without him. Where does she live, Nickleby? That's all. Only tell me where she lives, Nickleby." "He bites," thought Ralph. "He bites." "Eh, Nickleby?" pursued the client. "Where does she live?" "Really, my lord," said Ralph, rubbing his hands slowly over each other, "I must think before I tell you." "No, not a bit of it, Nickleby. You mustn't think at all," replied Verisopht. "Where is it?" "No good can come of your knowing," replied Ralph. "She has been virtuously and well brought up. To be sure, she is a handsome, poor, unprotected, poor girl. Ralph ran over this brief summary of Kate's condition as if it were merely passing through his own mind, and he had no intention to speak aloud. But the shrewd, sly look which he directed at his companion as he delivered it gave this poor assumption the lie. "I tell you, I only want to see her," cried his client. "A man may look at a pretty woman without harm, mayn't he? Now, where does she live? You know you're making a fortune out of me, Nickleby, and upon my soul nobody shall ever take me to anybody else, if you only tell me this." "As you promised that, my lord," said Ralph, with feigned reluctance, "and as I am most anxious to oblige you, and as there's no harm in it, no harm, I'll tell you. But you had better keep it to yourself, my lord, strictly to yourself." Ralph pointed to the adjoining room as he spoke, and nodded expressively. The young lord, feigning to be equally impressed with the necessity of this precaution, Ralph disclosed the present address and occupation of his niece, observing that from what he heard of the family they appeared very ambitious to have distinguished acquaintances, and that a lord could, doubtless, introduce himself with great ease if he felt disposed. "Your object being only to see her again," said Ralph, "you could effect it at any time you chose by that means." Lord Verisopht acknowledged the hint with a great many squeezes of Ralph's hard, horny hand, and whispering that they would now do well to close the conversation, called to Sir Mulberry Hawk that he might come back. "I thought you'd gone to sleep," said Sir Mulberry, reappearing with an ill-tempered air. "Sorry to detain you," replied the gull, "but Nickleby has been so amazingly funny that I couldn't tear myself away." No, said Ralph. "It was all his lordship. You know what a witty, humorous, elegant, accomplished man Lord Frederick is. Mind the step, my lord. Sir Mulberry, please give way." With such courtesies as these, and many low bows, and the same cold sneer upon his face all the while, Ralph busied himself in showing his visitors downstairs, and otherwise than by the slightest possible motion about the corners of his mouth, returned no show of answer to the look of admiration with which Sir Mulberry Hawk seemed to compliment him on being such an accomplished and most consummate scoundrel. There had been a ring at the bell a few minutes before, which was answered by Newman Noggs just as they reached the hall. In the ordinary course of business, Newman would have either admitted the newcomer in silence, or have requested him or her to stand aside while the gentleman passed out. But he no sooner saw who it was, than as if for some private reason of his own, he boldly departed from the established custom of Ralph's mansion in business hours, and looking toward the respectable trio who were approaching, cried in a loud and sonorous voice, "Mrs. Nickleby!" "Mrs. Nickleby!" cried Sir Mulberry Hawk, as his friend looked back and stared him in the face. It was indeed that well-intentioned lady who, having received an offer for the empty house in the city directed to the landlord, had brought it post-haste to Mr. Nickleby without delay. "Nobody you know," said Ralph. "Step into the office, my dear. I'll be with you directly." "Nobody I know," said Sir Mulberry Hawk, advancing to the astonished lady. "Is this Mrs. Nickleby, the mother of Miss Nickleby, the delightful creature that I had the happiness of meeting in this house the very last time I dined here?" "But no," said Mr. Mulberry, stopping short. "No, it can't be. There is the same cast of features, the same indescribable air of... But no, this lady is too young for that." "I think you can tell the gentleman, brother-in-law, if it concerns him to know," said Mrs. Nickleby, acknowledging the compliment with a graceful bend, "that Kate Nickleby is my daughter." "Her daughter, my lord!" cried Sir Mulberry, turning to his friend. "This lady's daughter, my lord." "My lord," thought Mrs. Nickleby. "Well, I never did." "This, then, my lord," said Sir Mulberry, "is the lady to whose obliging marriage we owe so much happiness. This lady is the mother of sweet Miss Nickleby. Do you observe the extraordinary likeness, my lord? Nickleby, introduce us." Ralph did so, in a kind of desperation. "Upon my soul, it's a most delightful thing," said Lord Frederick, pressing forward. "How do you do?" Mrs. Nickleby was too much flurried by these uncommonly kind salutations, and her regrets at not having on her other bonnet, to make any immediate reply, so she merely continued to bend and smile and betray great agitation. "And how is Miss Nickleby?" said Lord Frederick. "Well, I hope." "She is quite well, I'm obliged to you, my lord," returned Mrs. Nickleby, recovering. "Quite well. She wasn't well for some days after that day she dined here, and I can't help thinking that she caught cold in that hackney coach coming home. Hackney coaches, my lord, are such nasty things that it's almost better to walk at any time. For although I believe a hackney coachman can be transported for life if he has a broken window, still they are so reckless that they nearly all have broken windows. I once had a swelled face for 6 weeks, my lord, from riding in a hackney coach." "I think it was a hackney coach," said Mrs. Nickleby, reflecting, "though I'm not quite certain whether it wasn't a chariot. At all events, I know it was a dark green with a very long number, beginning with a naught and ending with a 9. No, beginning with a 9 and ending with a naught. That was it. And of course the stamp office people would know at once whether it was a coach or a chariot if any inquiries were made there. However that was, there it was with a broken window, and there was I for 6 weeks with a swelled face. I think that was the very same hackney coach that we found out afterwards had the top open all the time, and we should never even have known it if they hadn't charged us a shilling an hour extra for having it open, which it seems is the law, or was then, and a most shameful law it appears to be. I don't understand the subject, but I should say the Corn Laws could be nothing to that Act of Parliament. Wow, lots of stuff for the stories. Let's see what we got. All right, waking up in somebody else's clothes. Vomiting. So, not an angry drunk because you were just angry all the time? Okay. I'm glad you're not so angry now, though. That's good. Yeah, I don't get drunk easily, so I tend actually not to get drunk most of the time. Having pretty well run herself out by this time, Mrs. Nickleby stopped as suddenly as she had started off, and repeated that Kate was quite well. Indeed, said Mrs. Nickleby, I don't think she ever was better since she had the whooping cough, scarlet fever, and measles, all at the same time, and that's the fact. Is that letter for me? Growled Ralph, pointing to the little packet Mrs. Nickleby held in her hand. For you, brother-in-law, replied Mrs. Nickleby, and I walked all the way up here on purpose to give it to you. All the way up here, cried Sir Mulberry, seizing upon the chance of discovering where Mrs. Nickleby had come from. What a confounded distance! How far do you call it now? How far do I call it? Said Mrs. Nickleby. Let me see. It's just a mile from our door to the Old Bailey. No, not so much as that, urged Sir Mulberry. Oh, it is indeed, said Mrs. Nickleby. I appeal to his lordship. I should decidedly say it was a mile, remarked Lord Frederick, with a solemn aspect. It must be. It can't be a yard less, said Mrs. Nickleby. All down Newgate Street, all down Cheapside, all up Lombard Street, down Gracechurch Street, and along Thames Street, as far as Spigwiffin's Wharf. Oh, it's a mile. Yes, on second thoughts I should say it was, replied Sir Mulberry. But you don't surely mean to walk all the way back? Oh, no, rejoined Mrs. Nickleby. I shall go back in an omnibus. I didn't travel about in omnibuses when my poor dear Nicholas was alive, brother-in-law, but as it is, you know. Yes, replied Ralph impatiently, and you had better get back before dark. Thank you, brother-in-law. So I had, returned Mrs. Nickleby. I think I'd better say good-bye at once. Not stop and rest, said Ralph, who seldom offered refreshments, unless something was to be got by it. Oh, dear me, no, returned Mrs. Nickleby, glancing at the dial. Lord Frederick, said Sir Mulberry, we are going Mrs. Nickleby's way. We'll see her safe to the omnibus? By all means, yes. Oh, I really couldn't think of it, said Mrs. Nickleby. But Sir Mulberry Hawk and Lord Verisopht were peremptory in their politeness, and leaving Ralph, who seemed to think, not unwisely, that he looked less ridiculous as a mere spectator than he would have done if he had taken any part in these proceedings, they quitted the house with Mrs. Nickleby between them, that good lady in a perfect ecstasy of satisfaction, no less with the attention shown her by two titled gentlemen than with the conviction that Kate might now pick and choose, at least between two large fortunes and most unexceptionable husbands. As she was carried away for the moment by an irresistible train of thought, all connected with her daughter's future greatness, Sir Mulberry Hawk and his friend exchanged glances over the top of the bonnet which the poor lady so much regretted not having left at home, and proceeded to dilate with great rapture, but much respect, on the manifold perfections of Miss Nickleby. What a delight, what a comfort, what a happiness this amiable creature must be to you, said Sir Mulberry, throwing into his voice an indication of the warmest feeling. She is indeed, sir, replied Mrs. Nickleby. She is the sweetest-tempered, kindest-hearted creature, and so clever. She looks clever, said Lord Verisopht, with an air of a judge of cleverness. I assure you she is, my lord, returned Mrs. Nickleby. When she was at school in Devonshire, she was universally allowed to be beyond all exception the cleverest girl there, and there were a great many very clever ones too. And that's the truth. 25 young ladies, 50 guineas a year without the et ceteras, both the Miss Dowells, the most accomplished, elegant, fascinating creatures. Oh dear me, said Mrs. Nickleby, I never shall forget what pleasure she used to give me and her poor dear papa when she was at that school. Never such a delightful letter every half-year, telling us that she was the first pupil in the whole establishment, and had made more progress than anybody else. I can scarcely bear to think of it even now. The girls wrote all the letters themselves, added Mrs. Nickleby, and the writing-master touched them up afterward with a magnifying glass and a silver pen. At least, I think they wrote them, though Kate was never quite certain about that, because she didn't know the handwriting of hers again. But anyway, I know it was a circular which they all copied, and of course it was a very gratifying thing. Very gratifying. With similar recollections, Mrs. Nickleby beguiled the tediousness of the way, until they reached the omnibus, which the extreme politeness of her new friends would not allow them to leave until it actually started, when they took their hats, as Mrs. Nickleby solemnly assured her hearers on many subsequent occasions, completely off, and kissed their straw-colored kid gloves till they were no longer visible. Mrs. Nickleby leant back in the furthest corner of the conveyance, and closing her eyes, resigned herself to a host of most pleasing meditations. Kate had never said a word about having met either of these gentlemen. That, she thought, argues that she is strongly prepossessed in favor of one of them. Then the question arose, which one could it be? The lord was the youngest, and his title was certainly the grandest. Still, Kate was not the girl to be swayed by such considerations as these. I will never put any constraint upon her inclinations, said Mrs. Nickleby to herself, but upon my word, I think there's no comparison between his lordship and Sir Mulberry. Sir Mulberry is such an attentive, gentlemanly creature, so much manner, such a fine man, and has so much to say for himself. I hope it's Sir Mulberry. I think it must be Sir Mulberry. And then her thoughts flew back to her old predictions, and the number of times she had said that Kate, with no fortune, would marry better than other people's daughters with thousands. And as she pictured with the brightness of a mother's fancy all the beauty and grace of the poor girl who had struggled so cheerfully with her new life of hardship and trial, her heart grew too full, and the tears trickled down her face. Meanwhile, Ralph walked to and fro in his little back office, troubled in mind by what had just occurred. To say that Ralph loved or cared for, in the most ordinary acception of those terms, any one of God's creatures would be the wildest fiction. Still, there had somehow stolen upon him from time to time a thought of his niece which was tinged with compassion and pity, breaking through the dull cloud of dislike or indifference which darkened men and women in his eyes. There was, in her case, the faintest gleam of light, a most feeble and sickly ray at the best of times, but there it was, and it showed the poor girl in a better and purer aspect than any in which he had looked on human nature yet. I wish, thought Ralph, I had never done this, and yet it will keep this boy to me while there is money to be made. Selling a girl, throwing her in the way of temptation and insult and coarse speech. Nearly 2,000 pounds profit from him already, though. Pshaw! Matchmaking mothers do the same thing every day. He sat down and told the chances, for and against, on his fingers. If I had not put them in the right track today, thought Ralph, this foolish woman would have done so. Well, if her daughter is as true to herself as she should be from what I have seen, what harm ensues? A little teasing, a little humbling, a few tears. Yes, said Ralph aloud, as he locked his iron safe. She must take her chance. She must take her chance. Oh, reasoning away being an utter bastard. All right, well, I'm going to take a short intermission so I can go use the head. And then when I come back, we will switch over to Magic the Gathering. So if anybody wants to join me and hang out and chat while we play or do some challenge matches or whatever, I will be in the Bedtime Discord. And let me throw up the link to the Discord if you haven't already joined. There it is. So come hang out, chat, play some games. It'll be fun. All right, back in just a few minutes. Look at that. Not even 5 minutes. Take that, Panda. There's the minor issue of I don't have a wireless headset or mic or any way to do that whatsoever, unless I was broadcasting from the head all the time. And I feel like you would at least notice the echoes from the tiles and whatnot. I don't like wireless for two reasons, JMath. So the first one is I hate always charging the batteries and having them run out and always being worried that, you know, this is when I do my singing stream, that the battery doesn't hold enough charge. The other part is that wireless devices are way more subject to interference from other devices and stuff like that, and interfere with other things. So I actually try to use as few wireless devices as possible so that the ones that I really need don't have the interference, and so it's not an issue. But we are going to jump into some magic. Well, let me go ahead and jump into the channel. There we go. Hello, peoples. I'm in the channel with you. You know, you joke about the aliens, but I've had way more conversations about aliens lately than I really wanted to. Afraid my mother is going downhill a bit. She's started frequently talking about aliens and seems to think that they are here and invading and that most of the problems in the world are due to them. And yeah, it makes me sad. There are other symptoms of mental degradation too. Well, I think I'm somewhat insulated from QAnon, from, you know, being in a different country than the one it's associated with, but it has been getting exported, I've noticed. I'm doing it right now. I'm literally typing it as we speak. That's exactly what the tic-tac noises were. Clickety-clack, updating that. All right, and I'll go update the maturity rating. All right, all updated now. We good? Maybe. Apparently Twitch thought I was offline for some reason. All right, here we go. Yep, right category, maturity rating, right title. Let's do this thing. Well, the warning rating went up, but I'd say the general maturity of the conversation will probably go down. Yeah, probably overall decreased. All right, let's see how this goes. Update that sack? No, it doesn't. That speaker of the heavens is gonna have to go away. Can't be having 4/4 angels. Definitely not. Because I don't like them. You just taps, no mana, 4/4 flying. Another 4/4 flying, another 4/4 flying. It's no good. Nope, definitely badness. Nope. I never exaggerate. What are you talking about? That's not me. Hey, Gecko, you still around? I want to play Gecko and some Magic. Block with you. All right. Get him out. Yes, won the flip. Back comes the ghoul, and he takes 3 damage. This guy's kind of like a poor man's Vito. So the Tavern Swindler, you can pay 3 life and tap it, and you flip a coin. You win the flip, you get 6 life. So on average, it's always a good thing to do because you gain more life than you lose, and so it averages out to always be a life increase. And then this guy, whenever I gain 3 life, the opponents lose 3 life. And this guy will always come back to the battlefield from the graveyard if I gain 3 life. So it all works out. And that guy needs to die. Not totally sure what the point of that attack was. No, it doesn't. I could be right. No, you pay, well, I still, I think it averages out positive, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. All right. to put the troll out. Perhaps so. Okay. Well, thanks for hanging out for a while. I appreciate it. Also, tell him I said hello and that I'd love to, like, have him pop in now and again. Okay. Why did he sacrifice 2 goats? That was weird. Because he was going to do that. Too bad that's not going to work out for him. So destroy enchantment. And back comes the troll. But he gets 3 more goats. Okay. That's fine. Whatever. Slightly ridiculous, but okay. Roar. He's very grumpy. Let's get rid of those guys. Oh, I would have liked to play that Sanctum. Oh. I'm gonna guess he's gonna choose white. What do you guys think? Hey, look at that. He picked white. I am shocked. Shocked, I say. I'm going to end up having to do something about that priest. Okay. Oh no. Oh, he gave up. He wasn't even below half-life. Man. Ooh, that's a bunch of stuff. Let's get a pack. Let's see what we got. See if there's any daily deals too. Deals. Nothing I want. Packs. Grab a pack. Alright, fingers crossed for good stuff. Nimble Trap Finder. think I've seen this one before. It's a good trap or a card draw card. If you have a full party. Okay. Still haven't done much with the party mechanics. Those are still new to me. Oh, the reason it says Life Skills 2 is I unlocked a deck called Life Skills, and then I cloned it and changed it around a little bit. See if I could make it work a little better. The original one lacked any board clears and wasn't as good at dealing with hostile enchantments, which really screwed me on a couple of matches. Oh, Mad Mardigan, yes. You guys know who Mad Mardigan is, right? Please tell me you know who Mad Mardigan is. What? No. Blasphemy. You should. Learn it. Correct your error. I'm appalled at this. Panda, you know who Mad Mardigan is, right? Or no, she left. That's right. And Vela, you still here? Or are you putting your kid to bed? Nope, she's adulting. Man. Nobody here to correct your error. I mean, I was thinking of more of I'm having to suffer through, like, you not knowing. But okay, yeah, you can live in your shame. That works. Alright. That is like the worst way to describe it. Guys, he just called Mad Mardigan a secondary character in a film. No, he's the greatest swordsman who ever lived. Okay, that does it. We've got the watch party tomorrow, right? I'm gonna see if Willow is available as a choice for the watch party, because that was awful. I am appalled. Can't be having that shit. Boop. Booping Mad Mardigan would probably not turn out well if it was the real Mad Mardigan. This is just Mark Mad Mardigan. Although that avatar is actually kind of similar. Hey, since you're looking it up, remind me who played Mad Mardigan. Yeah, it probably needed a T instead of a D, right? I will forgive it, though, since he actually, you know, showed that he had an idea who Mad Mardigan was. That's what I thought, Val Kilmer. Okay. Lifelink or Death Touch? Let's go Lifelink this time. And next. I'm gonna come boop your nose again, dude. Boop. Griffin boops. Can't be having that. I think it's time to bake the Null Priest into a pie. It's just gonna have to happen. Nom 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 nom. I eat your creature. What? Oh, you suck. You suck so much. Alright, fine. Okay, I'll see when we get back. Hopefully I'll smack this guy down by then. That was dirty. Oh, sorry, dude. Oops. Forgot to end the turn there. Alright, what you got? Okay. Ugh, this is getting gross quick. Well then. Gonna have to play that as land. Get the Eerie out. And just throw that guy out. No attacks. So you know where I said I modified this to be better at dealing with enchantments? Yeah. I haven't drawn any of those cards. Hey, that wasn't nice. And those are about to get huge. Well, that's not doing a lot of good. Rip me. That's a good combo. Yeah, I'm toast. Definitely toast. Oh well. Let's double check that deck. Welcome back, J-Math. I got my butt kicked. It could have been better. Could definitely have been better. Do I actually not have that light enchantment? It seems like such an obvious enchantment to use for this deck. All right, let's throw what, 2 more planes in? All right, let's see how we do now. Probably going to be terrible, but that's okay. Should have a little more flexibility to deal with shit now. The deck I used to play back when I played ages ago, like Unlimited, Revised, all that shit, was a blue, black, white, not a control deck as such, but kind of close to that, I guess. We'll keep that. It would tap creatures and kill them, or unsummon them, or counterspell them, and then would start taking control of select creatures from the other player's deck and then turning them against him. So it redirected and used the opponent's strength against him. I didn't name the decks back then, but people told me fuck you a lot, so kind of the fuck you deck. It's fun for me to play. I've run into some sort of similar decks since I started playing this. It wasn't very fun to play against them, I gotta admit that. Gecko brought one out that was this like mill exile denial deck thing, and I couldn't do anything, and watched as all my land, everything I had, just disappeared on me. That part kind of sucked. Alright, let's see. Throw that out. Throw that out. At least I get a blocker. I was about to be surprised if he actually blocked that. Alright, get that one out. Should definitely equip the skewer. Although, I can't say I care for that war leader being out. So maybe we'll do something else instead. Poop the snoot. do wish I had more in my hand than just 2 lands. So what you snacking on, J-Math? A peanut butter sandwich. Okay. It's actually the first time I've used a giant skewer. Let's see if he'll block and give me a food token. No. Dang it. Well, fine then. Gain some life anyway. Cost him a little bit more life. Okay. All the 1/1 blockers. It's cute. And food token. Gain life, and you take damage. And enter. That's actually not a bad combo. Switch the giant skewer to the patrician after this. Now I can block that angel. What the hell? Okay. We're just gonna make our angel ridiculous. What do you think? Tank the damage? tank the damage. Either I draw something that can take care of that angel next turn, or I'm screwed anyway. Looks like I'm screwed anyway. Well, craptastic. Alright, here comes death. Rip. So the question is, now that I've made it to platinum, do I ever make it anywhere else? Alright, let's try again. By the way, for those of you who are just joining us, I used to play many years ago. Like, multiple decades ago. Now I feel old. And I just started getting back into this a week or two ago. So I haven't played much. I'm still learning all these new mechanics and stuff. So if you guys see me doing something dumb, please call me out in the chat. Tell me what I'm doing. I'm still learning and improving on this. Although I think it's pretty good making it to platinum, only having played for like a week or two. Let's throw that one out first. Get my little 1/1 blocker. Doesn't like my bastion. Man, I'm not sure I would have wasted that on that one. Oh well, I boop your nose. I can see your nose right there. You may have it turned up, but I can still boop it. Alright, double boop. Come on, the boops are cute. I don't mind sounding like I'm a 5-year-old or whatever. Have you gained life? That's kind of gross. Huh. Go, go, ghoul. Boop the nose. One more land and I can eat his scion of the swarm. All the noms. That's broken. Can't be having that shit. Yes, won the flip. Everybody attack. All the boops. I think you might be having a bad day now. But not giving up. Do you see that? He's not giving up yet. All right. I got one segment. I can do this. One segment at a time. Gecko was telling me it's even worse at like Mythic. So I'm guessing it takes multiple wins to get a single segment, or there's just a whole lot of segments. I don't know which it's going to be. I also, believe it or not, didn't know that there were prizes. Check this out. Did you know there were prizes for like finishing in certain tiers? Like I had no idea. I thought that's pretty cool. Although I tell you, for as much work as it would be to get to Mythic, that is not the greatest reward. It seems like way more work than it's worth. But that's probably part of the point, right? Get you to spend money instead. Well, no, because, you know, they want to make money. It's like this crazy thing where businesses like making money. Who knew? I never would have guessed such a thing, let me tell you. Wait. Okay, so just throw that out. And we'll attack with both of those guys. Dick. Nice. So because he did protection, the damage was negated, so I gained no life out of the boot nipper, which meant that I didn't gain enough to trigger Griffin Eerie. That was a really cute play. Well, that part sucks. I was hoping for some mana. Oh, well. Getting tired? Did you eat enough peanut butter sandwiches to put yourself in a food coma? It is a little embarrassing. New meds could do it. Aw, he murdered my creature. Alright. No worries, man. Okay. I'm just gonna shatter his sky. Oh, I did. I did it. I did the thing. Alright, have a good one, man. There we go. do love these turnarounds. This is why I added the board clears to this deck. So I could do shit like this. Let him play out most of his cards, get all his creatures out, and then wipe them out. Lay down some multiplying creatures of my own. Of course, this would be a perfect time for him to pull out his own board clear. Which would suck. Aw. I liked that card. Oh well. Unless he's got something else that he can do, he is screwed. There's Vito. All the attacks. Good game, dude. Victory is mine. Where did Gecko go? See if we can lure a Gecko out to play some Magic. By the way, if you want to jump in the Discord, hang out, chat, whatnot, here's the link to the Discord. Wouldn't mind some company. And we're doing a monthly giveaway too, and the questions are in the Discord. Links, all that kind of cool stuff. Most of the time I read books, old books, because public domain and copyright laws are a pain in the butt, as everybody has learned on Twitch with things like the DMCA stuff. But read books a few times a week, chill, relax, stream, that kind of thing. And then on Friday and Saturdays I play Magic as well. Okay. Yeah, keep that. It's kind of mean. Okay, so much for that creature. Lifelink's nice, but really need some other stuff, I think. Yeah, let's see if we can get a different card. Lots of sacrifices in his deck. It's kind of interesting. land from this more. So I'll go ahead and throw that out. Let's get our queen out there. Well, she's probably just going to draw fire. What is with all the goats? Well, that was weird. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Not super nice, but makes more sense. Okay, so let's throw this guy on here. And let's throw that guy out. And this guy out. A little more life. Well, that wasn't very nice. Not very nice at all. Fine then. Well, that's game. Because once he attacks with that guy, it's going to also do 3 more damage, so 12 damage. Looked nice there for a second with that cleric. I wonder if he thought that was going to plus up both of them. Otherwise, it didn't make any sense to boost up the one that wasn't able to attack. It was weird. All right. Guess we'll give it one more go. See how it ends up. Land out there. All the equipment this time. You can just see this guy with 3 spears on him. Totally ridiculous. What are you? Okay. I can feel it. Gonna get land screwed. Here it comes. No land for me. Nope. Maybe a little land. All right. Let's get our patrician out. Rip. Bye-bye, patrician. Still thoroughly land screwed. Oh, I'm gonna have to shatter the sky and then do the Baneslayer, aren't I? God, if I lose to these guys, that's gonna be embarrassing. Definitely a landfall deck. Oh. At least the counters are only until end of turn. That's not as bad. I thought they were permanent counters. That would have been scary. Okay, that's scary too. Yep, that's game. Rip. Man, I tell you, even at gold, I wasn't really losing that much. But since I've hit platinum, I have just been getting my butt handed to me. It just suppose makes sense, because the people that make platinum would have to be a lot better. I imagine diamond is even worse. So of course I need to make diamond. Alright. Well, I think that's going to do it for me for today. I get bored kind of hanging by myself, so dead chat, and everybody else is all adulting and being responsible and going to bed on time and all that stuff. So I think I'm going to step out for a bit. Do join the Discord if you want to come hang out. I'm online quite often during the week to game, as are a bunch of other people. It's a fun group, chill group, nice people. So hopefully you can join us. I'll catch all of you later. Thank you so much for hanging with me. And we'll raid Alex real quick before we go. Alex is good people. He streams Dead by Daylight. He's been a bit of a friend to me as I'm learning all this streaming stuff. Let's see if I spelled it right. Yep. All right. And away we go. In 3, 2, 1, raid. Hello. How's you, fella? We just raided Alex. Although his stream is frozen on my screen. I'm here. Sorry. I guess you couldn't hear me from the stream. Alex's stream is frozen for me and not responding. Would you tell him I said hello?